Overcoming the fear of failure. Hi, my name is Luke Vu, clinical psychologist, mental health expert, helping young men overcome digital addiction, depression, and anxiety. Today, we're talking about a universal fear, the fear of failure. Quick disclaimer, I'm not your psych, this isn't treatment, and if you need a psych, you should find a registered, qualified psychologist in your area. Why are people afraid to fail? There are many reasons why you might be afraid to fail, but it commonly stems from one of four reasons. 1. You're probably trying to avoid the embarrassment and shame associated with failure. 2. The idea that failure is aversive and you're fearful of experiencing it. 3. You don't want to attempt the task because you don't feel capable. And 4. You're avoiding effort. You've limited yourself to only doing things you're good at because they're easy. Leaning into your strengths and being reminded of what you're good at is more pleasant than working on your weaknesses. Now, some of us find it hard to be reminded of our shortcomings. Isn't failing a normal fear to have? And when can it impair my life? Let's break this down a little further. Anxiety about failing is normal. Anxiety is when your fear system is activated, and it's not inherently a good or a bad thing. It's evolved over hundreds or thousands of years to help you navigate uncertain and threatening situations. Anxiety, when well managed, helps you become more conscientious, attentive, analytical, and alert when dealing with issues. Poorly managed anxiety is overwhelming and can lead you to withdraw to avoid the source of that anxiety. When you frequently avoid things that are good for you, in the long run, that's when it really impairs your life. So why do some people have this fear and others don't? Everybody has anxiety. It's pretty rare for someone not to have any anxiety when taking a risk or undertaking a challenge. There are two reasons why someone might be better at dealing with this fear than others. The first is that they have implemented strategies to manage that anxiety. This could be a variety of things, from positive self-encouragement, adapting to a level of uncertainty through practice, having supportive social networks, having a supportive upbringing, or accepting that failure is an unavoidable part of learning. The second is that they have learned to detach their self-worth or ego from the outcome, such that in an unsuccessful outcome, they don't see themselves as a failure, and instead, they see it as a way to get helpful and sometimes painful feedback. To get a little bit more technical, those who tend to struggle with this fear may be under the effect of some cognitive distortions. The first common distortion is a labeling error, where judgment on a certain behavior is extended to define the person. So for example, just because you failed a task doesn't make you a failure. The way we talk about ourselves, to ourselves, directly impacts our emotional state. It's subtle. When we keep the failure specific to the task and not to our self-worth, it's easier to focus on the logical corrections to improve. There is a world of difference between I failed that test because I spent all night gaming versus I'm a failure in life and that's why I failed that test. The second distortion is catastrophization. That's when we exaggerate the negative outcome of a single action, such as, if I don't get this job, I will be homeless and no one will love me. Now, these two distortions increase the perceived risk of your task, and consequently, your anxiety scales to that heightened level of risk. Imagine if all your self-worth rested on you applying for that job and you thought you would be laughed at when you turned up. Well, of course your anxiety would signal that there's so much threat and that you should bail, and people do. Can something instinctual as the fight-flight response be rewired? How do I do this? Anxiety can be rewired. We do this all the time. We can recalibrate to things we used to find daunting and fearful. So in treatment, the most direct way to reduce anxiety is to systematically expose yourself to the fearful task. Most times, we do this slowly, skillfully, and incrementally. Let's say you're a musician and you're fearful of releasing your music. You're afraid that others will judge you negatively or that you haven't lived up to that image that you want others to have of you. Take a breath. Recognize that you're unnecessarily raising the stakes on yourself. You don't have to release a smash hit every time. And just because your work is unpolished doesn't mean you're a failure. You're a musician. Making and releasing music is what you love to do. You can start to break this down. What's the smallest thing you can do that will pull you closer to releasing music? And let's pick something small. Do you think you can handle just loading up the laptop and start recording that melody you had in your mind? How much anxiety did you have to negotiate in order to load up the laptop? Probably more manageable than thinking your whole self-worth is on the line. How is the concept of failure often overestimated? Well, when people think about failure, they often attach their self-image onto success or failure of that task. Is it necessary or fair to yourself to attach the weight of your entire self-worth to the success of a task? It's not. The attractive person at the bar that said no thank you to you offering to buy a drink didn't condemn you as a human being. They just said no to an invitation to chat. So where did we pick up attaching our self-worth to tasks? It's not always clear. Some people would have picked up this belief as part of their upbringing, and some just discover it for themselves. We learn that sometimes we can increase the stakes by placing pressure on ourselves, and in specific contexts, we might have a better performance. But we make the mistake of using this personal pressure as a statement of reality, and not simply just a tool to achieve a purpose. When we were younger, perhaps that tool worked, but you don't have to use it all the time. Should I be unafraid to fail? Will my life change when I overcome this fear? I think acknowledging that failing at a task does not equal you being a failure is really important, because if you're able to openly accept failure some of the time, then you eliminate the penalty for taking creative and important risks in your life. It's liberating. And I don't think it's entirely helpful or realistic to be completely unafraid. A mild dose of fear is helpful. It keeps you sharp and attentive. So how do I break out of this mindset? First is accept that excessive fear of failure holds you back. Now write down your fears honestly. Break them down and expose yourself to them so that you can better understand them. Do the things you're avoiding slowly, skillfully, and incrementally. Start small and you'll avoid feeling overwhelmed. So if you're feeling stuck, try these 3 things. If you're still struggling with the fear of failure, it might be worth seeing a psychologist. There are a range of techniques such as exposure techniques, cognitive techniques, breathing techniques, and sometimes it's necessary to resolve traumatic, historic, or childhood issues that might be holding you back. I hope this helped you better understand the fear of failure and how to reach success in whatever pursuit you choose in life. If you found this useful, don't forget to hit subscribe. I'm Luke Fu. Be kind, be you. Catch you next time.